A reading from John 13:31 through 38. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am only with you a little longer. You will look for me, as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you will love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where am I going? You cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times.
Good evening. In the verse that we just heard, the verses that we have before us tonight, it's the night before Jesus is crucified. Jesus begins his final hours with his 12 disciples at his side. Soon Jesus will be actively headed in the direction of the cross. And I want to point out a couple of things in the verses that were just read in John. But before that, I want to kind of catch us up to speed. In verse 26, Jesus had told Judas, the betrayer, "What you are doing, do quickly." Then Judas leaves the room. The devil enters Judas's body. Now, John knows that Judas is the betrayer. He's the only one of the disciples that knows that Judas is the betrayer. So he's kind of got his head all wound around all kinds of different things. He's knowing who the betrayer is. He knows that Jesus is going to the cross. He's got all of this stuff now. One of his own has betrayed. So John's particularly got a lot of things going on in his mind. But then Jesus turns his attention back to the rest of his disciples and he says, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and the God is glorified in him." So the final stage is set in motion. The reason Jesus came to earth is being realized. As Christians, we have to understand one simple thing, that every person on earth is placed here to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to glorify. Glorifying God is the root of man, and from the root of everything receives its start. Over and over again throughout John, Jesus has been speaking of the hour coming when he would be glorified. And by that he meant the time of his death, his burial, his resurrection, and his ascension into heaven. But primarily what he is referring to when he speaks of glorification is the cross. That's why it says that Jesus is going to be glorified now that Judas has gone out to betray him. That betrayal is what leads Jesus to crucifixion, but understand something. Understand that this is God's grand plan for redemption. Judas may have been the earthly means that sets the cross in motion, but the cross was planned long before the world was ever put in place. Before God ever created, he knew that we would go astray and that we would need a Savior. So before God ever created, he made a plan to send Jesus to save his people by dying for us on the cross. He did this to save his people. He knew this long before the crucifixion took place, long before Judas had anything to do with it. But also with the cross, also that by Jesus going to the cross, God would be glorified, magnified. he would be magnified on the cross. That's the way we magnify God. That was his intention. And that's why Jesus keeps referring to the cross as where he will be glorified. The very point of the cross is the glory of God. So Jesus often speaks of the glorification in reference to the cross. Think what it would be like to have the strength to be heading into your darkest hour of your life. But know that you will shine most brightly with the glory of God. Now, the Son of Man and the Father within him will be glorified, and God will be magnified by Jesus on the cross. Another important part in these verses that I picked out is Jesus' phrase, little children. Now, why do you think he would use the word little children? He's referred to children numerous times. Follow me, children. Come with me, children. Children, do you have any fish? He's used children so many times throughout this, but never has he used little children. I believe, particularly for John in this reading, that he is so mortified that this is such a traumatic, emotional time that Jesus needs to speak to them and handle them with kid gloves. He needs to talk to his disciples as though he's talking to children because they are just traumatized. Again, particularly John, for knowing who the betrayer is. Little children, I am going where you cannot come. I'm leaving you. Up till now, everyone knows who his disciples are, right? Because they see them following him around. They're tagging along behind him wherever he goes. It's easy to see who his disciples are. If he goes to Judea, they go to Judea. If he goes to Galilee, they go to Galilee, right? Their life is on the line just by being identified with Jesus. So it's easy to see who the disciples are. But now I will be not with you any longer for you to follow me. I'm leaving. I won't be here. Following my physical presence will not be the mark of you being one of my disciples any longer. So I'll give you a new mark, a new command, a new badge. Love each other as I have loved you, little children. So betrayal has been put in motion. The glory of God is about to be seen. Jesus is leaving them, and in his absence, love each other is to bind them together and to bind them to Jesus when he's gone. And in a moment of conflicting and intensified emotion, Jesus reaches for a word of singular affection and refers to them as little children. We have critical days before us, don't we? Always. We always have critical days before us, and maybe now more than ever for us. In the moments over the next days, months, years, Jesus is calling very clearly that we love each other. This is the call of the hour. Love each other. Lay down your conveniences. Lay down your privileges for each other. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted to mark as the badge for his disciples now that they're not here. And that's what he expects of us. Understand the badge of love is not a suggestion. It's not a time of convenience when we have some spare time. This is what all believers are called to give their life to, because this is what Jesus died for. Because of how Jesus loves us, we then are called to love others in the same way. And if we would see the love of Jesus rightly, fully, and see the amount of love that Jesus has for us, we would be compelled to joyfully love others the same way. But it's hard for us to see that. It's hard for us to see the amount of love that he had for us. We cannot copy Jesus in everything and in every way. But there is one thing that looks like atonement and has an amazing effect on a family, in a church, in a friendship. Peter 4:8, love covers a multitude of sins. Think about that. Love covers a multitude of sins. Are you frustrated with anyone these days? Little things, big things? Are you frustrated with anyone at home, school, work, church? Love covers it. Love covers it. And when we talk about love, you can't help but think about the favorite Colossians. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. And isn't that like Jesus? Isn't that like God? Love never fails, nor do they. How blessed is the church who loves like this, who loves like God. So the reason we love that we have for each other shows that we are truly Jesus' disciples, because that's the badge that he put on us. It's the badge that he put on his disciples when he left this earth. And that is only possible because we are grafted into the life and love of Christ. We love as he loved because we love with his love.
The plot to kill Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Man of Son will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who is called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. Lord, have mercy. Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Then one of the 12, who is called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him.
The Passover with his disciples. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me," and became greatly distressed, and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "One who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes it as written of him. But woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would not have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I." "Rabbi," he replied, "you have said so." The institution of the Lord's Supper. While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out of many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit from the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
Peter's denial foretold. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Lord, have mercy. Jesus prays in Gethsemane. Then Jesus went out with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and agitated. Then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hand of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
The betrayal and arrest of Jesus. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Peter's denial of Jesus. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before all of them, saying, "I don't know what you are talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
Jesus brought before Pilate. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Lord, have mercy. Barabbas or Jesus? Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to him, "Which of the 2 do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." Pilate hands Jesus over to be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves."
The soldiers mocked Jesus. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put him in his own clothes. Then they led him away to crucify him. Lord, have mercy.
The Crucifixion of Jesus. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry the cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now. If he wants to, for he said, I am God's son. The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. Lord, have mercy.
The death of Jesus. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, this man is calling for Elijah. At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. Lord, have mercy.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to the many. Now when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, truly, this man was God's son.
When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away.